Okay, today's lesson is learning about substitution and evaluation. And what we're looking at here is algebraic terms. And what an algebraic term is a number and a letter that are interacting. And before we do anything, we have to understand what they're actually doing with one another, between the letter and the number. So if I take a look at the first one here, which is 3m, what does this mean? Well, the 3 and the m are beside each other, and it means they're multiplying. So I can go 3 times m. And we don't really know what m is unless I told you what it was. So if the question is asking you to substitute and evaluate, and we tell you that m equals the number 2, and the only way you would know that is if we told you, now you can substitute a number in for m. So m is no longer the number, or no longer the letter m. We know it's really the number 2. So really, we're going to be doing 3 times 2 because we're subbing this in for m. But a word of advice because of negative numbers, I would recommend that you do something like this. Well, let's erase that and try that again. And I would try this. You're going to go 3 times and put a bracket. And the bracket will make sure that you don't forget about the negatives. And I'm going to plop in 2. So for the first one, it just means 3 times 2. So it equals 6, if m was 2. Okay, let's do the second one. On this one, we know there's a 2 and an m and a plus 1. Well, what are they doing? That's the most important thing to know before you start. We know the 2 is multiplying with the m, and then a 1 is being added on. Now, remember, you always have to ask yourself, what am I doing first? Multiplying or adding? And if we think of BEDMAS, multiplication happens first. So I have to do 2 times m first. Okay, in this case, let's make m equal to the number 5. And I'm going to ask you to sub in and find out what the answer would be. So again, go 2 times, put a bracket, and then put plus, and then a 1. And this time we know that m is really the number 5. So I have to do that part first because it's multiplying. So 2 times 5 will be 10, and then I add the 1 on to the end. In this case, I would get 11 if m equals 5. That's all you're doing. Now here's a good case where you should put in the negative sign with the brackets because you're going to have to change a double sign. And here's what I mean. In this case, we have 4 minus m. Let's make m equal to negative 2. Okay. Plug it in, but make sure that you write it with a bracket. So let's put a bracket. And this time we're going to plop in negative 2. So when I do that, I now have a double sign. And if we remember, 2 negatives make a positive. So you'd have 4 plus 2. So your answer would not be 4 minus 2, it would be 4 plus 2, and you would get 6. So that's the first part for substitution. I am going to show you another example here, and I'll just create a new page. Here we go. And with this one, I'm just going to make it a little bigger. What we want to do is, if we have a question that looks like, let's say, 2mp plus 2, and this time I tell you that m really is equal to the number negative 3 and p equals number 2. What I want to know is if you sub in both of those, what does this whole thing equal? Because that's what substitution and evaluation means. Plug in the numbers and find out what you get. So I'm going to rewrite this out. 2mp really means 2 times m. Whoa, that looks bad. Let's try that again. Times p. And then plus 2. So that means I have to do multiplication first. It means I have to do this first before I add the 2 in at the end. Substitute in, put brackets for the m and the p. Now in the case of the m, we know that m equals negative 3. So I put it in. And I know that p equals 2. So I stick that in. And then at the end I still have plus 2. Okay, I'm just going to erase that so I can actually write out below here. Okay, and now I have to make sure that I do all the multiplication first before I add on 2 at the end. 2 times 3 will be 6. There's a negative, so the first 2 will turn into negative 6. And then I've got to multiply it by this 2. And then I've got my add 2 at the end. Now I do those two. 6 times 2 is 12. I have a negative. And then I add 2. Now remember, use your number line. If you're negative 12, you're 12 floors below ground. You go up 2 floors, you're going to be now at negative 10. So now, really what you've done is you found out what 2mp plus 2 is if m is equal to negative 3 and p equals 2. That's all there is to substitution and evaluation. You're just substituting numbers in for the letters and finding out what the whole thing is equal to.